Welcome to this episode of the Road Hunter Podcast, where we're sitting on this amazing landing in this is the Tillamook Forest?
This is the Tillamook Forest.
Yes, we're in, out in the middle of nowhere near the Tillamook area.
Yep.
We have with us today Ryan Feutz.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, and we're going to chat about some fun hunting stuff. We were rolling down this hill. And I think you said something along the lines of, I love hunting.
I do love hunting.
It sucks.
It does. Yeah.
But I love hunting.
Yeah, absolutely. It sucks waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning and driving an hour to not see anything every day, but I don't know what I'd do without it.
Yeah. We're obsessed.
Yeah?
I see this meme every once in a while, the Dumb and Dumber guys, where they're leaving all excited to go somewhere, and then and then it's like coming back from hunting, and they're all sad. I think we're just as excited coming back from hunting, even when it was dumb and we didn't see anything, as we were when we left.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I get down on myself, towards the end of a long season when, I go 4 or 5 weeks without seeing a single thing, but other than that, it's pretty, I'm obsessed. I will wake up every day and I will do it, whether my wife likes it or not.
Yeah, I think by the end of, I would say maybe by the second week of October, my wife is like, "Are you sure you want to go?"
Well, I think by opening weekend, my wife is like, "What's the point of you even going? You're not going to see anything anyways."
Right. Well,
that's fair.
Yes.
However, what if
this last year we got one on opening day?
Yeah.
So it's possible.
Yeah.
It's possible.
So I've shot quite a few animals on opening day, but that was in a different state. Back in the Midwest, hunting it's a lot different than out here.
Mm.
Most of the time, I'm shooting something in the last week of the season.
Yeah, it does feel that way. You're either going to get it on opening day, or you're going to get it on the last weekend, or the end of the last week.
Well, it also depends on the season you're hunting, too. If you're rifle hunting for, let's say, deer, you'll either get something on opening day, or the first 3 weeks of the season are just absolute garbage. And then you've got about 2 weeks of pre-rut to rut time where you're going to see deer. It's just a matter of how many and when. I've got 1 week a year that I swear by, and I will take that week off of work every year.
Yeah.
Just because I know during that week I will harvest. It's just a matter of if I do it on Sunday or Saturday.
Absolutely. And you see the interesting thing is if you're out enough, and I would say there's not very many people, I would probably put you in this category and a couple other people that I know that get out in the woods as much as Eli and I do.
Oh, yeah.
And you see this transition of basically right as bow season starts, I can go out and see some animals.
Yep.
I'll see a big buck, and I'll be like, I really want to see that buck during season, and then you won't see it the whole season. And then there's this, it like dries up right before rifle season starts.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden you start seeing all these new deer on about that third week, maybe fourth week.
That's where the rut really starts kicking off. And that's where you're going to see the most of them because they're changing their patterns, they're moving around, and, I bow hunt, and I'll go out and I'll see animals, for the first 2-3 weeks of bow season. I'll see them, but they're not in bow range at all.
They're way out.
And then I'll switch it up to rifle season the next year and say, I'll definitely get it because I can see them at 100 yards and I'll shoot it and I won't see a thing.
Yep.
So it's failed outdoors.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why we started this. We started Failed Outdoors because we drive around the woods and laugh at ourselves at how terrible we are at it, right? The lucky time and place situation we actually did harvest something.
Yeah.
But we fail more than we actually are successful.
Well, that's hunting.
Yeah.
That is 100% hunting. That's just like fishing.
Yeah.
You're not guaranteed anything.
Yeah.
So the more time you put in the woods, the more time you put beating feet and, slashing timber and just getting into clear cuts and, dropping in anywhere you go, you're bound to see something. You're bound to get lucky.
Yeah.
I mean, it drives me crazy. The people that drive around and get one every year, and it just blows my mind because I can't do that.
Yeah.
I drive around, I hardly see anything when I drive.
Yeah.
And I'll put miles on my pickup.
Yep.
Or the Blazer every year. I'll drive on dirt roads for 50 miles.
Yep.
From Gales Creek all the way to Tillamook and not see a single animal. And
well, we went out the other day. I would say 2 weeks ago, and we probably saw 13 deer.
Yep.
We went out.
Well, that's springtime.
We went out yesterday, and we didn't see. No, was it Friday night? We went out Friday night, and we didn't see a deer.
Well, that's all weather dependent too. Yeah. It's very much weather dependent.
Yeah. I would imagine if we were out right now in the units that we go to, the areas where we've seen deers, just with this cloud cover, this little bit of weather transition that could come in this next week, we would see at least a handful of deer.
Oh yeah. It'll be our luck that we'll have a whole herd of elk.
Oh man,
3 yards behind us.
That'd be great.
That would be pretty cool.
Love to get that on camera. But it's just out of season.
Well, yeah.
The other thing is elk
just out of season.
No, it's out of season. We sat during elk season in the area that we hunt, and we saw elk from the last week of the general coastal elk season for
archery or firearm.
Firearm.
Okay.
So it was basically the week of Thanksgiving.
Okay.
About that Tuesday, we saw elk every day.
Yeah.
We have not seen elk on that property since the latter part of November.
Okay. Well, that's the other thing I've learned about elk hunting since I moved to Oregon is elk are transient.
Yeah.
So I've got properties that I have the ability to hunt on that the elk are literally only on for 2 days a year. There'll be a time in June and a time in December.
Yeah.
So if you miss that December day or you don't even have a tag for that, you might as well just sit there and watch them. Count tines. Or count hooves.
An area we've seen a ton of elk, and we've hiked down into this little bowl. It has this crazy elk sign bench if you just kind of drop off, and we drove by it the other day, and the logging company had just blasted a road through it, and it was like, well, they just messed up that spot.
See, you think that, but the elk don't seem to care either.
That's true.
I know plenty of loggers out that they'll fell trees, and the elk will just come up and start eating the branches off the tree that they just knocked over.
Yeah.
So it's elk are the darndest things,
aren't they? They're hard. They're hard to hunt.
They're the biggest, most frustrating animal I've ever gone after. And I'm sure that's just personally what I've gone after.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's plenty of other ones out there that are on my bucket list that are going to be just as frustrating, but as quickly as they come into your view, they disappear without a trace.
Yeah, and they're quiet. For as monstrous and loud as they are, they can be as sneaky as
they will just
any
grow
other
wings.
Yeah.
You could be chasing them down a road, and it could be a sheer cliff on the end, and they just poof.
And they just tuck those. They tuck those antlers back against their backs and just fit through the
way they can go up
stuff.
An incline.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yep. All right. Well, we started off with a bang with some good hunting. How'd you get started hunting?
See, I was a kid I grew up in northern Michigan, and it seemed like going to school, everybody hunted. Everybody hunted with their dad. And I went to my dad. I was probably 10, maybe 11. We had got into archery shooting, my brother and I had. And I went to my dad and I said, I want to start hunting. And he said, okay. And him and I went to hunter safety together, and we learned to hunt together. We learned to fail together.
Yeah.
And that was, I think, my first sit. I was, the legal age to hunt on your own. I was bow hunting, because in Michigan you can bow hunt and rifle hunt in the season.
Lucky.
Yeah, right. Season starts October 1st and ends January 1st. Yeah. So if you get the combo tag, you can hunt all of archery season up to November 15th. November 15th through December 1st is firearm season. And then December 1st through the end of the year is late bow season. And you get a combo tag. You can shoot a combination of a buck and a doe, 2 does in archery season. In firearm season, it's $2. And they may have changed in the last 8 years since I've lived there, but I know from people I still talk to, they've told me it's a lot easier to get doe tags. But the past couple of years I lived there, it wasn't really hard to get doe tags. I was harvesting 3 or 4 animals a year. But
whitetails,
yes, whitetails, yes. So I started at 12. First morning, first sit, I missed my first deer.
And you were hooked.
And I was hooked. My dad and I sat.
Obsession for the rest of your life.
We built this little ground blind, and we sat there, and I had my bow. It was an old Bear Whitetail Elite. Just a little bow. I still have it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Love that bow.
The one with like the 10% let off or whatever, when you're like,
it's but I mean, this was for a kid that can't really pull back anything. Well, I had this little 4-point, which would be a fork and horn here, because in the Midwest we know how to count all of them instead of.
Well, we like math here on the West Coast, where we have to add them up together, so we only say the sides.
Right, but we can count it all up and do it in our head.
But I have to write it on a piece of paper and then, do my... Yeah.
It's real bad when you get up past a 4-point with eye guards and you got to start, oh, man, I just got to pull the toes out. But, so, in Michigan, or the Midwest, in the whitetail community, they count all tines that are bigger than an inch. So I had a fork and horn come out, and I'll say he was 10 yards. He might have been 6. He might have been 15. I don't know. I was 12 years old, and I was going like this. I stood up. The deer didn't have any idea I was there, which was cool. And I pulled back and wafted him straight over his back. I would have got a second shot off had my arrow not smacked into a stump and echoed through the woods. Then I saw that dreaded white flag, and he was gone.
Oh, yes.
Then it was 10 years before I had an opportunity at shooting another deer.
Wow.
So, yeah, I had seen deer, had failed many times, and took a couple years off to join the service, and wasn't really, first year I got out, I was able to harvest my first deer.
Awesome.
Which I was 22 years old and had no idea what the heck I was doing.
Hey, I was in my 30s before I got my first deer, so I think that's I would say, unless I guess you're young and your dad or your uncles or grandpa actually knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
But mine didn't.
So my dad, like I said, my dad and I were learning together how to hunt, and he shot one, I think I was 13 or 14. So it was a year or two after I had started hunting when he shot. It was a 7-point, so it had eye guards, 2 on one side. One was broken off, but it still counted, and then it was a 4-point on the other side. So yeah, so I guess here would be a 3x2 with eye guards.
Yep.
The West Coast math is crazy.
Hey, we're different out here. We're different.
But yeah, he shot that, and we had seen that deer that morning, but he just came cruising through with his nose down, and I was happened to be facing that way in the ground blind, and I said, Dad, there's a buck there. And that was the most exciting thing because it was a buck.
Yeah.
And it was a big buck. He wasn't huge. He was a basket, but it was just super cool. But he never gave me an opportunity, never stopped, never. We tried hollering at him. That was before we knew how to meh.
Nah.
That was before we knew that. We were like, hey! And it didn't even care. It didn't even care. But we were so new at hunting that, we failed together. And that was awesome.
Yeah.
That was some of my greatest memories with my dad, is going on 6, 7, 8 mile hikes, not seeing anything.
Yeah.
But I didn't go out that afternoon because teenager excuse, wasn't feeling good or something.
Yeah.
He got back to that blind and sat down, and he said within 10 minutes that deer came out and gave him a shot.
Wow.
So he called me on his old cell phone, I'm sure it was a Nokia or something.
Yeah, one of those like clunk.
Yeah. He called me on that and said, "Hey, I got one down," and magically I was feeling better. I think the blind was about 1.5 miles back in the woods, and I met him back there, and I dragged the thing out myself.
Awesome.
And he thought that was the greatest thing because, he didn't have to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to say, us learning how to dress out a deer in the wild, I downloaded, because I'd never done it before.
Yeah.
And he obviously hasn't ever done it before. Well, he has now. He basically dresses out anything that we harvest at this point. But I had Steven Ranella's How to Gut a Deer downloaded to my phone, and he's holding it up while I'm watching it, and I'm trying to be like, all right, so I go here, and then I'm gonna
So back to my first deer. I had just gotten out of the Navy. First season, opening day, I shoot a little 5-point. He'd be a 2x spike with eye guards, is what you guys would call it. I thought it was a spike, and I had my dad's 30-30. Love that.
Yeah.
Love that rifle. He shot his first deer with it. I shot my first deer with it. This last season, my oldest son, Logan, shot his first deer with it. And I shot my first bear with it, which is super. There's a lot of firsts that go into that rifle.
Yeah.
So that one's going to stick around for a while.
Yep.
But I shot it. I had no idea what to do. I shot it off to my left. He was about 45 yards away. I thought it was a doe. It was a single deer, came down from about 150 yards and was coming right at me. There was a power line stand. And in the bottom of it was a swamp. So he's kind of up and down and up and down and up and down. And I was staring at this deer, and I couldn't figure out what the heck it was. And he got to 45 yards, picked his head up, flashed a spike at me, and I was like, oh,
There's antlers there.
There's just something there. And I squeezed the trigger. The deer did a front flip, like landed on its back and got up and sprinted straight at me. And this stand was up on this little bluff, and it came and ran about 2 yards in front of me, and then turned and went, because the power line was on an L, and the bluff's up on the corner, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
And he ran right up, and it started going up that other power line, and it went up a hill, and his front legs got out, and he died 7 yards in front of me. And it just kind of flopped
nice.
over, and I was on my cell phone with my dad, flip phoned. I called him. He's at work, and Dad, I just shot a deer. So he went into the conference room at his work.
Yeah.
Called all of his buddies that he worked with. And he had me on speakerphone, and they're all giving me tips on how to gut it because I had no idea. Yeah. Here I am, 22-year-old kid. I've been to war.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to gut a deer.
It's not intuitive.
It's not at all. But once you've done it,
yeah.
Once you've done it, okay, I remember that. I remember how to do it.
Yeah.
And then you get into doing it, and you do it 3 and 4, a dozen times, 2 dozen times. You've done it 50 times. It's easy.
Yeah.
But then you shoot an elk. It's all the same parts.
They're just huge.
You can't just reach in there and yank it out.
Yeah.
And that's what, and I've done it. I've cleaned deer half a dozen different ways. I've done the gutless method. I've done the guts out. I've done it hanging. I've done it tail up. I've done it neck up, hanging. I've done on the bed of my pickup truck. I've done you name it. I've probably gutted a deer that way.
Yeah.
And it's pretty easy. Yep. Once you've done it, you know what to do and what to avoid.
What's the hardest part?
The butthole.
See, you got to get one of those butt out tools. Seriously, I've got 2 of them in my pickup right now. It's an orange T-handle thing. And down at the end, I'd have to dig for it. I'd show you on camera, but you cut around the anus, and then you make sure that it's all cut inside. You cut it from inside of it. You stick it in, you twist it, and then you just yank it out. It is the best thing. It's awesome.
Get one of those.
Butt out tool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I'll tell you, this kid, he had some choice words to say as we had this elk on the side of this hill like this, and we're trying to like hold it up from skidding down, and he's trying to get the whole.
That's what rope's for.
Yeah.
Well, we had a chainsaw winch.
Yeah.
But the dude who was using it was a pain in the butt and got it all jacked up, and then we had to use the car to pull the elk out the hill. And I blame him. He messed it up. It's his fault.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my fun first gutting story.
I would not know, because there's a whole bunch of people that we know that just want to go out hunting.
Yeah.
But then there's always the what comes after the harvest, and you don't think about that too much.
The hardest part.
Yeah, it is. Once the work happens after the trigger's pulled, right?
Yeah. It doesn't matter if you've gone down this cliff and up to the top of that. If you harvest something over there, the real work begins.
Oh yeah.
It was tough getting down there and up.
Yep.
But then you got to get down and back up again.
Yep. Absolutely. We've had to pack out one. We haven't had to pack out any deer.
No.
All the deer we've shot have been either on a clear cut or enough.
Died in the middle of the road where you shot it.
No.
Called out, sir.
At least up into the woods, more than 50 feet. Come on.
More than 50. Did you shoot it 50 feet off the road?
What if it was like horizontally 50 feet off the road?
I identified as 50 feet off the road.
Yeah, like could it have been shot more than 50 feet and then ran down to the road? Potentially.
Possibly, yeah.
No, most of ours have been on clear cuts. That we're basically either coming down from the top or up from the bottom, and then either dragging one way or the other.
I've had some pretty interesting pack outs. Eastern Oregon.
Oh yeah.
Elk pack outs. I've done, my bear pack out this last season. That was fun. It was really hard. I got to back my pickup right up to the edge and winch it 10 feet.
I have to say, having a winch is one of those things that I definitely need to invest in. And having used the chainsaw winch, I'm a fan.
Yeah, I've been a part of a chainsaw winch pack out. I'd like to get one just to have one, but I don't know. Part of me is kind of like to do things the hard way too.
Yeah,
my wife will attest to that.
I think there's a time and place for it. Like the chainsaw winch where we were, and it was only, I don't know, 200 yards or so off the.
Even that.
Yeah, I mean, we're to the truck. Like as we get there, we're like bringing it up to the truck. That was a good chainsaw winch. But we watched these dudes from the top of this thing. They chainsaw winch this elk more than 1,000 yards. It would have taken them. I mean, it basically took them all day.
It would have taken them. I
Like,
mean,
just pack it out.
there's the time and a place, and then at some point, the cheating way, which it's not really cheating. You know, if you have it, use it.
Yeah.
Why not? But it can become more work.
Yeah.
Way more work than it's worth.
Yeah.
Why do you need to take an elk out whole? What?
Yeah.
Well, there's no reason to take an elk out whole. What are you going to do with the rib cage? I mean, break it all down.
Mm.
Then, if you have a jet sled or something, then you can use the chainsaw winch, and it's
And then it's way less.
Way less
Absolutely.
work. But if you're going to break it down, you know, you've still got to hike out to get the chainsaw winch.
Yeah.
You might as well take a quarter or two with you to hike out to get the chainsaw winch. Then you might as well, once you're hiking all the way back down, then you got to hike back up to get the chainsaw winch up to where you need to.
Yeah.
Might as well pack another quarter out.
Our first elk, we quartered it out and hiked it out, and it was challenging.
It's not easy.
We would have done way better if we would have learned the break the leg thing on that
Yes.
cart, and because we came out with this much of the leg that we didn't need to. The head was surprisingly a lot heavier than I thought.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, but if you get down to, depends on what you want to do. If you're going to cape it and shoulder mount it, which I'd love to do it, but it's got to be the right bull.
Yeah.
But if you break it down, take the bottom jaw off.
It's cold up here.
You know,
I got a little wind chill
it's
just
not terrible.
kind of coming up my.
Eli's always cold, though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he looks blue over there.
Yeah. Blue and red.
That's right. But the taxidermy bill for me, man, I have more fun and enjoyment in the hunts and the pack out and the eating it, and I am happy to just have the skull with the antlers.
Well, yeah,
but the cost of it just kills me.
Yeah, my bucket list is, I'd love to have a trophy of each.
Yeah.
So I've got a trophy whitetail.
Mm-hmm.
The last season I was in Michigan, I shot a perfect, amazing 10-point.
Nice.
He's shoulder mounted.
So 5x5 with eye guards?
Nope, 4x4 with eye guards.
4x4 with eye guards.
Perfect symmetrical. G3 is just freaking to the moon. Just awesome. Awesome buck. And he was the first one that I had ever shot that was, I walked up to it and was like, wow, I need to. And everything else has just been little plaque mounts or European mounts.
Yeah.
I've got a wall. Everything's a trophy to me.
Yeah.
Little spike's a trophy to me.
I have a unicorn spike.
Nice.
I'm proud of my unicorn spike, man.
Yeah, I've got one of those too. It's my I think my second buck after I shot that first one was a little unicorn. I thought it was a big doe because the antler was abscessed. He never dropped it down.
Yeah.
And he never grew another one on the other. Well, it was a button. It was broke off.
Okay.
It was barely a button. But it was hanging down, like you could grab it and just move it around on its head. It wasn't attached to anything. Yeah, so when you cut it off, you could see the pedicle was right there. And I've still got it to where it's cupped to where it would go over.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like a ball.
Oh,
like
that's
a shoulder
cool.
or a hip ball socket that would just...
That is cool.
I thought it was a piece of grass laying over a doe's ear.
Yeah.
And I shot it and was like, oh, well, good thing I got a tag for that.
Glad I got that one. It's the beginning of the year when you do have, like, if you did draw a doe tag and a buck and you're like, oh, it doesn't matter. But man, when you get down to it and you're like, ooh,
Yeah. I ate some tag soup last year, even though
I think we owe you a hat for that. It's a little failed outdoorsness action, skunk hat.
I'm down for hats. I've eaten tag soup quite a bit. But last year was my son's first year hunting.
Awesome.
So I knew buying my tags that my tags were bonus.
Yeah.
So I harvested a bear, my first bear ever last year.
That's awesome.
It was awesome. He was a taxidermy bill.
Well, wife's happy with you about that, I'm sure.
Yeah. And then duck hunting. I've got a duck at the taxidermist that's kind of a...
It's a pretty duck.
Yeah. It's one of those where I was like, well, I don't know. You guys were with me.
Yeah, we were there.
You were in the blind with me when I shot it.
Yeah.
Right after you shot your first duck. Yeah. He was. I was like, man, I don't know. He looks pretty. And I talked to my taxidermist, and I was gonna have a pintail mounted. And he said, why don't you bring that other one? And he looked at it. He's like, I know guys that have been hunting ducks for 50 years that have never harvested one in this good a shape.
Nice.
So it was kind of one of those like, oh, well, I didn't know what I had. But sweet. Awesome. He just would have gone in the pot.
Yeah.
Had I not talked to the taxidermist about that, but I can't wait to get him back. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. We are all in on ducks.
Yeah.
Now.
Oh, I'm glad I drug you along.
Yeah. No, we are.
That was
we'd been wanting to get into duck hunting, and in good opportunity to learn.
It was one of those things where I started I'd always wanted to, but it's one of those things where unless you know somebody that knows a little bit about it, you can't just go out and do it. It's super hard. Well, you can, but you're going to fail outdoors a lot on it.
And we still did. It was the blind leading the blind.
It was, right. But I started duck hunting 7 years ago. I think I went out my first time, and I went out a handful of times with my brother-in-law, and he had a dog, and, each time I think, we never limited. I've never taken a limit of birds. It's partly luck. It's partly, opportunity. I think the most I've harvested was 5 in a sit, and the harvest limit's 7. So, I got pretty close to limiting, but that's definitely a learning curve.
Yeah, it is.
So I'd been out probably a dozen times by myself or with somebody prior to taking you guys out. So I sort of knew the ropes.
Mm-hmm.
I won't ever call myself an expert duck hunter, but I think the first time I brought you out was right after I had my tonsils out, right?
Yeah. No, you had called all day right after you removed your tonsils, man.
Yeah, 2 days. 2 days after I had my tonsils removed, we were sitting in the frigid cold. You had pneumonia the week before. You kept leaving the blind to throw up. That was fun.
Yep.
And I called all day long, and let's see. We didn't get skunked.
You got a coot.
We shot a duck-like bird.
A duck-like bird. Yes, we did.
Well, I did. Yep. I got tired of not shooting anything. But then the second time we went out, that was
good.
That was awesome. We were set up nicely. You were out with Chris?
Corey.
Yeah. Corey. I know it was a C. It was his first time out. You guys happened to draw 2 blinds. I didn't draw anything, so I sat with Eli. You sat with Corey.
Yep.
You guys were really blind leading the blind.
Yeah, we were. He knew nothing, and I knew next to nothing.
But we were sitting right across the lake from each other, and boy, that was awesome. I think Eli and I had a dozen ducks just 2 minutes before. I kept telling him, 2 minutes, 2 minutes. 1 minute. We got ducks swimming around in front of us. Right after shooting light, we had a little teal hen. She's just landed right in front of us, just at shooting light. And I said, Eli, take her. She landed, she called right in front of us. And as soon as Eli stood up, she got in the air, and he just bam. Oh, that was a super cool moment. He was so excited. Then it was fun. I got to watch him walk across chest deep. He had to break through ice to go get.
Yeah.
That was a cold morning.
We had thrown our decoys out. That was probably a good, I don't know, 10 yards from the shore, and I threw it out and it landed on the ice and skidded. I'm like, oh, that's not going to work. So I had to walk out there and break the ice so they would actually float.
Well, that was the day that we had a real good failed outdoors laugh where my waders split open from my belly button all the way down to the crotch. And I had to go after a couple ducks.
You're a little wet.
Yeah, Eli's heated socks weren't working, so he was he was done.
He was frozen.
He was failed outdoors.
Yeah.
He was done.
He kept texting me, I can't move my toes.
He had my hand. He had his waders off in the blind. No shoes or socks on. Waders off, feet on the bench. He had my hand warmers on the bottom of his feet, wrapped in my big coat. But that's also part of hunting.
Yeah, absolutely.
You live and you learn. This year you're going to have better waders, right?
Yep.
Me too.
You have to, yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, it's a good time.
It was.
I'm glad I got you guys into duck hunting. Now I've got people to go with, and
we're excited. I'm already thinking, like, when do I put in for those blinds? Because I want to put in for them all the way through.
Right. I'm going to put in every chance I get for them. I think we were going to talk about doing different days, different units in there.
Yeah.
So for those of you that don't know, we're talking about Savi's Island units.
Yeah.
Which is, it's newbie type hunting, but it's a great flyway.
And it's great because you don't have to have a dog.
Right.
I mean, you can go out and duck hunt and not have to invest in the dog.
We have a dog.
Well,
we don't when his waders don't work.
Yeah, true. I still want to get down off the Willamette.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
We found a good spot
and
down there.
You were going to look at that unit down by you.
Yeah.
You were going to look at that.
Yep.
You said that's a very popular spot for people. But
we need to walk out there and see how much you can wade out into those.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, if you're going to get a duck down in the middle of it and not be able to get it, that's going to be difficult.
A fishing pole with a big hook.
Exactly. We shot one duck, spent all day trying to get it.
Kayak before. I have been out duck hunting with people that don't have a dog and they bring a kayak with them, and that's how they retrieve. The problem with that is if you wound something, you got to chase it.
What we have him for.
I've knocked down. Not harvested, but I've killed my fair share of ducks that I haven't harvested, which is always a gutting.
Yeah, it is.
Anytime you wound something.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say that out of all the failed outdoors things that happens, the wounding and not finding is always a challenge.
Yeah.
And we spent this last season. What was it? Probably half a day.
Yep.
Gritting out this clear cut.
Yeah.
No, I mean I have to say we probably didn't hit it because I didn't. I mean, or if I did, it was a graze because there's a little bit of blood where it was, and then there was no more blood.
Oh yeah. Or there was just no exit wound, and the entry wound got plugged up by something. I know.
But we could not track it. We couldn't find it. We couldn't.
That's a bummer. I've had that happen, and it's not a fun.
Yeah.
Never fun to do that kind of thing, where you know that it's wounded.
Yep.
Maybe mortally.
Yep.
So.
It's always, that's always the hard part about it. Yep. But I mean, if you're going to do this long enough, you're going to get
an animal you can't
find.
I say that to everybody, is you're lying if you haven't done something, or if you're honestly telling the truth. If you've never wounded an animal that you couldn't find, your time's coming.
Yeah,
it's going to happen at some point. And if you archery hunt, you're going to miss.
Oh well, there's just so many things that could happen, and with the arrow going a lot slower than a bullet.
and that's the, people are like, I've never missed with an arrow. It's like, yeah, but you're about to.
Yeah.
What if? what if the wind gusts like this? What if you go out? What if you slip on something? The first deer I ever wounded was something completely out of my control. Archery hunting. First 8-point buck. 3-point with eye guard. Have to say it. First 8-point I've ever saw. I was in a cornfield, and he was up, and I drew back, and I shot, and I probably could have slapped the arrow out of the air by the time he started walking. And it was perfect height, but he had taken about 2.5 steps, and I hit him right in the back ham.
Oh.
Just thunk. There was about 120-acre cornfield, and he went that way, and I came back this way, and then did this, and then circled back around, and did this and that and that. And it was in the middle of fall, so we got out, and he finally got out of the cornfield, and I think by the time we tracked it, we had walked about a mile to get a quarter mile. And got out of the cornfield, and it was all yellow leaves with red little splotches on them. All oak trees. So there was no finding blood in that.
Yeah.
And by that point, we were finding, a pencil eraser amount of blood every 10 yards. So by then it was like, it could be 20 yards before we find a pin of blood. And no. No.
Yep.
That was one of the toughest ones, where the realism of the amount of blood at first that we found, he's probably a bled out deer.
Yeah.
Which stinks. He could have been 50 yards past where we stopped, but how do you do that? You grid as much as you can, but I've had those. I've had complete pass-throughs that were right in a not good spot. I've had hit the inbound shoulder. I've had multiples that, just couldn't find. And that sucks.
It does. Absolutely.
So.
Well, did you have any moment, or I know we talked a little bit about this interview before we started.
Right.
Did you have the most memorable
failed
moment?
I got one.
All right.
That I haven't talked about yet. I don't even know if I told you about that.
All right.
This was 3 or 4 years ago. I was archery hunting for elk, and out in Northern Oregon Coast Range, not Washington. And I got out to my spot, got out of the truck, and the elk were already where I wanted to get to. So I was like, well, at least I can try and sneak. I could hear them where they were at. And I tried to get to them, and I split the herd. And it was just getting light enough to where I could see the bodies, the tan bodies moving through the woods. And I saw the herd bull, the one I've had been hunting all year long. A ton of trail cam pictures of him. I saw him, but it was just way too dark to even attempt to shoot. And I'm glad I didn't, because I would have been shooting through a bunch of stuff that just my arrow would have gone anywhere. So the herd split, and I didn't know it split, but most of them had gone up this hill that's just super steep. Well, this was before my hip surgery, so I ran as fast as my hip would allow me to. Went about 100 yards, and then I went almost straight up at them. And I didn't know how far they had gotten or even which way they went. But I get up, and I was just about dying. Just I'm not a small guy.
Right? There's some There's some effort to breathe.
Right, there's some hustle that by the time you get up some of these hills, it's just not.
Yeah.
The deer or elk are going to look at you and be like, "Hey, he's not a threat."
Yep.
So I got up and I realized, okay, I can't go any further. My hip is not going to allow me to. I had my hip replaced 1.5 years ago. My hip wasn't going to allow me to go any faster up this hill. So I got to the point where I was like, kind of benched out a little bit. And I said, okay, grab my bugle call. And I said, maybe I can get something to turn. Maybe I can get something to come to me. So I start bugling. And it was the most perfect outdoor channel bugling calling session I've ever heard. I would have given Phelps a run for his money. It was perfect, if I do say so myself.
Oh, perfect.
I'm beating trees. I'm going to town. And I'm bugling, I'm cow calling. I sound like a whole herd myself. And then I hear a twig snap. And I'm like, oh, there's an elk that came in. Oh, it worked. I'm awesome. I did this perfect calling sequence. Everything after that was the most failed outdoors thing. I'll bet you I missed that. He was a 5x spike. So he had 5. He basically had a sword that I'd had a trail cam pictures of him. He had like a little crab claw at the top.
Okay.
Then he had a G2, and he had 2 tiny little brow tines right here. So he was a 5-point, and then he just had one sword with nothing off. Just a probably 2.5 foot long spike. And I was like, that'd be really cool on my wall. I think I missed him.
Oh, you mounted him before you even took the shot.
I did. Oh, I did. I bet you I missed him by 10 miles. I don't even know what. I don't know if I hit a limb. I don't know if I hit. I don't know, but I shoot Luminox, so I could see my. For all I know, the arrow went behind me. I don't. No idea. I just saw. Oh, you're not getting that one back. There goes $25. That's probably one of my biggest failed outdoors moments where everything went right, but it was amateur hour when it came time to do it.
It was that hike up the hill.
I don't really even know what it was. It was by that point I had caught my breath enough. I think I just had buck fever, bull fever, whatever you want to call it. I think it just got to me enough that it was like, and for all I know, I could have hit a little limb. I mean, I was in repro, so I mean, I have no idea, but it's one of those things where I missed one that year, and everybody asked me what happened. I don't know. 45 yard shot that should have been a chip shot. Listen, Bull was just staring at me like, thought there were elk up here.
No, just a big guy breathing heavy.
Right? It's just this bear up here doesn't know what he's doing.
He just slowly moseys off.
Yeah.
Like, whatever.
Well, it was, and that was the thing where I missed him, and it didn't even spook him. I wasn't even close enough to spook him. I don't even know. My arrow could be a mile away from where he was. I had no idea. It could have went a foot over his back. Could have been 2 feet behind him or right in front of him. It was. I cannot remember exactly where my arrow went, but I know I missed him by 10 miles. There was no chance I even. But yeah, that was a big. That was probably one of my favorite, most laughable moments because it was the best calling sequence I had ever had. And
all by yourself.
All by myself. And it worked so perfectly. And I just couldn't do what I needed.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
Yeah?
Yeah. But, I mean, it happens.
Well, it does.
Absolutely.
It's one of those things where if you're not missing, well, I mean, at least I saw something. I know people that literally don't see any animals all year long.
We have a buck, and I think everyone has a Goliath, right? I mean, I'm sure you have a Goliath, but we have a Goliath, and we had him at 200 yards, and I didn't dial, and right under, and you saw the splash right on the other side, and he's just like, peace.
Yep.
Like, oh, that was probably my only opportunity at that deer.
Yeah. Yeah, because you just made him that much smarter.
I did. Yep.
They don't get that big for no reason.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what advice do you have for other hunters when we wrap up here?
Well, there's so much stuff that goes to mind. I would never call myself a professional hunter. Been hunting for old.
Apparently 4 years younger than me.
27 years, I guess I've been hunting for. I've had successful years and I've had not successful years. Best advice would be spend your money wisely on gear.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because Gucci gear is not gonna harvest you anything.
Gucci, Sitka, whatever.
If you, well, that's a fun nickname.
Yeah.
I mean,
Gucci
it's any
gear,
of them.
I like
Kuiu. I mean, they're all great.
Yeah, they have their purpose.
I can't afford them.
Yeah,
but I would rather spend that $1,000 on glass.
Yep.
I would rather spend that $1,000 on a bow or boots.
Hiking boots. Absolutely.
Is the number one thing. I learned that years and years and years ago, back when I first got into blue collar work, is take care of your feet.
Yep.
And the number one place, if you're going to hunt in Western United States, is you're going to be hiking.
Yep.
Take care of your feet.
We are sitting on a clear cut that goes straight out and straight down and benches and then down and then benches and then down. All right. And if you're going to hike down that, you better have a good pair of boots.
Yep.
Because you're 4 feet.
So I will always spend my money wisely on my feet. I'm not going to say exactly what you have to go buy.
Okay.
But don't go cheap on your boots.
Yep.
Don't go cheap on your gear. Walmart camo is going to camouflage you the same way that Sitka is.
Yep.
This
kid goes out in blue jeans and he has this thing in his head that he doesn't need camouflaging and kill animals.
I mean, that's what
he does.
That's what they started with. They started with wearing a red
red checker
red flannel jacket and a pair of blue jeans.
Yep.
That's what they until they really started getting into different camo patterns, they didn't have that kind of stuff. And that's
he would have a different tone to his story here if he was a bow hunter.
Yeah,
because you're just closer. You have to break up your silhouette. Right. You have to.
And that's the biggest thing is you have to break up your silhouette, and you don't have to match camo.
Yeah.
You don't have to wear the same pair of pants, the same camo pattern pants as your shirt and your hat, and you just need to make sure that you're broken up and your backdrop is everything too.
Yeah.
You want to make sure that you're not skylined on stuff. You want to make sure that you're not sitting wide out in the open where you're sitting on a canvas.
Yep.
So wind directions, everything, scent control is, the best thing you can do for scent control is wind.
Yep.
You can spend all the money you want on all the products to descent your stuff, and you're still going to smell your BO.
Yeah.
I mean,
my front harness pack has my binos, my rangefinder, and my wind indicator, my puffer, and those 3 things with my rifle should, if I set myself up correctly with good wind and an advantageous clear cut or something, right? I'm just not going to go sit at some random spot where I have more likely to see a deer. Those things are going to help. Where they're not just going to be like, oh, there's a fat guy up there.
Well, and you're still going to screw it up.
Yeah.
I mean, there's always going to be a shoulda, woulda, coulda.
Yeah.
There's always, always, always a shoulda, woulda, coulda in a hunt. Even if it's a successful hunt. You should have taken the shot sooner. You should have waited.
Yeah.
You could have waited. You could have shot better. You could have been in a different position. You would have done this had this happened.
Yeah.
There's always shoulda, woulda, couldas in any hunt. And successful hunt or not, I can't tell you how many times I'll sit at home, man, I should have done.
We do that.
Man, if I would have just hit my alarm one more time, or not hit my alarm more time,
right. I actually got my butt out of bed.
Right? Yeah. But yeah, my biggest advice would be spend your money wisely on the right things. The gun, yeah, the $2,000 gun's great, but it might as well be a paperweight if you don't have the right glass on it.
Yep.
Spend your money. If you're going to buy a $2,000 gun, match it with the right quality of glass.
Yep.
Whatever brand is your brand, don't go put $100 scope on it, because that thing's going to blast apart like nobody's business. It's going to be off all the time.
Yeah.
You're going to say, oh, this gun is the worst in the entire world. It's not the gun. It's the setup you have, or it's the shooter.
Well, and if you're going to spend that kind of money on a gun, and you're going to spend that kind of money on the glass, take a minute and learn how to shoot it.
Right.
Right.
And
like,
if you
get out and
if you can afford to have the Sitka or the Kuiu or any of the Gucci brands that if you're going to spend $200 on a pair of pants that are going to rip the same as a Walmart pair of pants, if you can afford it, awesome. I'm not trying to knock you at all, but make sure that you've got all the right stuff, and don't down talk me because you've got cheap camo on. Oh, I bought 7 pairs of pants for and that's still half of what you paid on yours, and I ripped mine less than you did.
I will say the one thing that I can think that those brands do very well that I wish you could do with other brands is layer properly.
Yes.
And control the water, the moisture. Yes. Because without fail, the cheap camo, you're going to get wet, you're going to get soaked, you're going to get cold, you're going to...
That's true. Yeah, so you will get those things. But if you dress properly, you're still going to... I mean, I have the same pair, and I say Walmart brand, but I will buy Cabela's Redhead. I love Cabela's Redhead. Yeah. I love their stuff. Yeah. It's awesome. It's affordable for a blue collar worker, for a kid that wants a good hunting pattern, for anybody. It's great. It breaks up your silhouette. It lasts forever, and I mean until you go off and just clear cut.
Yes.
But if you invest your money properly in the right gear, buy the right pack. Don't go to back to school and just pick up a camo backpack and expect that you're gonna pack an elk out with that thing. Yeah. It's great to haul your binos and your gear, but if you harvest something,
I will say
what are you gonna do?
we bought what is it, an Alps Z?
Oh yeah.
It was $107 when I bought it. For a backpack, that is super cheap. Mm-hmm. Like not the greatest pack out backpack ever. Right. It did pack out an elk. Yeah. We strapped that. I mean, we taxed that thing to the max.
Yep. but also you got to do your research on stuff too. Yeah. So most of these huge brands, I'm a huge Badlands pack guy. Yeah. I love Badlands packs. They have a lot of these big companies have the warranties that Badlands has, the unconditional, no matter what. In 50 years, you can call them and say, "Hey, it ripped," and they're going to say, "Oh, okay. How can we make it better?" So there's a lot of those that help and are awesome, and so Vortex, Leopold, however you want to say it. They have their unconditional warranties.
Yeah.
And they're great glass. They're not necessarily Swarovski, but Swarovski's got the same lower end stuff as they do the higher end stuff.
Yeah.
So what are you gonna do?
You can definitely tell the difference though between Leopold and Vortex.
Really?
Yeah. Leopold apparently is way better.
Really?
From a lot of the people that I've seen on YouTube.
And it really depends on the brand, right? Like if you're looking through the Crossfire Vortex versus a high-end Leopold, right?
True. Yeah. I kind of go middle of the road.
Yeah, me too.
I like the Diamondback and the Vortex. I like the Diamondback brand. It's a HD glass. You could tell the difference between the Crossfire a little bit, but it's I've looked through both, and I just don't have those kind of eyes.
I'm
gonna clear to me.
I'm gonna say though, I've used Vortex for a while, and we picked up a pair of Athlon binos.
Oh yeah, you were telling me about those.
For me, way better than Vortex. I love Vortex.
Yeah,
love these Athlons, but we picked up a scope. A dial up is $400 on a scope. You can dial it. It's very very accurate. The zero holds. Glass is great, and it's an Athlon.
Yeah.
And their brand is nice. I think the difference is that research, right?
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time on YouTube watching videos of quality, like the Arkin versus the Athlon versus the Vortex.
It's also personal preference. Yeah. It's also, and then you're going to get into, your personal preference.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you may not like the way that it looks on your rifle.
Yeah.
I mean, there's aesthetics, there's weight is a massive thing. If you're going to Western hunt, that's a huge thing. You don't want to be hauling around some big, huge, massive, clunky scope on, well, maybe. It depends on what type of hunter you are. If you're solely a clear-cut hunter, yeah, absolutely. Pull up with the rifle, pull your tripod out, and mount that 400-pound sucker on the bipod or tripod, and
funny thing
nuke them out of the sky.
This last year, he picked up an AR-10.
Yeah.
And we put one of those, the Athlon scope on it. And I didn't realize how heavy an AR-10 was, but man, that's a heavy rifle to hunt with.
but the other thing is, if you're a bow hunter type rifle hunter, where you're going to get in, you're going to beat the brush, you're not going to want a big long 26-inch barrel.
Yeah.
You're not going to want a big 50 power scope.
Yeah.
I mean, you might want a 3x9.
Yeah.
By 40. Something that you're going to be able to slip through brush. You're not going to want something that's half the size of the rifle.
Well, I'll say when we do brush hunting like that, I've got a little 30-30.
Yeah.
That's what we do.
Yeah. And I mean, that's...
Even off season, we don't carry the big scoped out rifles and stuff. We just throw the 30-30 in. If we see a cat, then we're within range. If we see the cat and we're not within range, it wasn't meant to be.
I mean, I've got a 30. Lucky. My dad's 30-30's got a scope on it, which I won't ever change that rifle because my dad passed 15 years ago. So I won't ever change that rifle. I will let that thing sit the way I'll sight it in as much as I can, and once it gets to a point where it doesn't shoot anymore, well, it's going to go on the wall. Or just sit in the safe.
Yeah.
But I want to get I'd love to have another 30-30.
Yeah.
But I'm really thinking about going 45-70 because it's also kind of a bucket list item to shoot a deer or an elk open sights.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty cool. I think every true hunter's got bucket lists and stuff where I'd love to shoot every Northern American animal with a bow. The
big ones.
The big ones, bear, deer, elk.
No, you can keep your bear with your bow. You're fine. I don't need to be that close to a bear.
I was. This last year, I almost got. Almost. But then I ended up harvesting my bear. I could have shot him with a rifle. He was close enough.
Yeah.
Or with a bow. He was close enough. But it just happened to be deer season and rifle with me, and that's how it happened. But I'd love to be able to do that with a bow. And I think it'd be really cool to shoot something with a traditional. That'd be really cool.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's ever going to happen. Probably not. That's a lot of practice.
I wanted to be excited to get into bow hunting. I'm just not excited about it. Really? I love shooting rifles. I love shooting guns.
You know what?
I've
never been so humbled by any animal like I've been humbled while hunting with a bow. I have been so close. Every year that I've hunted in Oregon, every single year, and this is a flex, if you want to say, every year I've been close enough to be drawn on an elk, and the shoulda, woulda, coulda happened. I should have shot.
Uh-huh.
I would have if I had practiced a little bit more. I could have shot because you always think that the kill shot's this big because that's how big it is on a target. On an elk, the kill shot's
you got a little leeway.
Well, yeah. So and that's the shoulda, woulda, couldas.
Mm-hmm.
You look back at it and like, his heart was covered up by a tree. Double one shot him.
No.
He's gonna go less than his heart. He can't live without his lungs.
Yeah.
So I've been close. I've been into them every year that I've hunted. It's just hasn't happened. I've shot one elk before in my life. That was a cow 2 years ago, and that was a super lucky opportunity. Awesome. A European monitor, because like I said, everything's a trophy.
Everything's a trophy.
But
it kind of feels that way. I mean, I still get as excited. Like he gets all the big, deer, elk, whatever, right? And Dad over here, I don't think I've shot anything bigger than
fork.
Did I get a fork?
You did get a fork.
I did get a fork.
No.
So I haven't shot anything bigger than a fork, and I've only got one elk that's a spike. Yeah. So I'm in the itty bitty.
Well, we don't know what it was.
That's true. It did break off.
Yeah, he had cutoffs.
But we should have found it.
Let's go look for it.
Yeah.
But to me, it's just about the fun of just getting out in the woods and hunting and harvesting something, and then
in the freezer,
eating it throughout the year, and
that's one of my yes. Of course, I want wall candy.
Uh-huh.
Of course, I want a big old 6x6 on the wall. But guess what? A cow's going to eat the same.
Yep.
And, the old adage, you can't eat the antlers. Yeah, but the antlers are cool to look at.
Yeah, they are.
I will be a trophy hunter that way, but at the same time, I will not pass up an opportunity on a legal animal.
Yep, me either.
If it's legal, absolutely, I'm going to, a spike will punch a tag the same way a 6x6 will.
Well, and you've hunted this territory. We were talking about it on the way up. You've hunted this territory as much or as more as I have. And if it has an antler and it is in front of you and you choose to pass on that deer, that was likely the only opportunity you were going to get.
Absolutely. Well, and that's the other, going on the other side of that, the next guy's probably not going to pass it up.
Yep. And
this area, you're lucky to find a spot where nobody else hunts.
Yeah.
Well, everybody hunts it. Everybody goes everywhere.
Yep.
I mean, I can't tell you to get out of my spot because I found it. You have just as much right to be here as I do. So, another piece of advice: be courteous to everybody.
Yep.
There's no sense in being an a-hole. For trying to keep it a little PC here. There's no sense in being an a-hole about stuff. Like, fine. If you come up on somebody, back out.
Yeah.
You can talk to people, too. You can wave and talk to people.
Yeah.
Be friendly. Because guess what? I'm going to help you pack something out. I've been on plenty of pack outs where I had never met the person before in my life.
Yeah.
But I came across them, they harvested something, and I hope that they take my generosity is, hey, there might be a point in my life where they randomly run into me as I'm packing something out and say, hey, you want a hand? Yeah, that'd be awesome.
I would have to say more times than not. I mean, there is that that jerk of a hunter that's just gonna. We've seen them. They drive up and down the roads really, really fast, and they go to the end of the road, turn around, and leave. They didn't even spend enough time glassing, and you're sitting up on the knob. You've been sitting up there all morning trying to hunt this area, and they just drive right through the middle of the clear cut, and it's like, jerk.
Yeah.
But I've also ran into a lot of people like you in the woods where they're like, "Oh, you got something down?" That guy, when we got that elk down, he was an older gentleman, and there's no way he was going to hike to the bottom of it, but he's like, "I got some rope. Yeah. We can try to pull it up." Yeah. I'm like, that's 500 yards down there. I don't think you got that much rope.
Right. But if there's something that you can do, you might have had, all the rest of the rope except 500.
Yeah, true.
Except 100 feet of rope or whatever. What if the next guy comes by and he's got 100 feet of rope?
Yeah.
Well, soon.
You're going to make it.
Soon enough. Well, that's 100 feet of rope or 100 yards of rope, whatever, that you didn't have before. Yeah. Be generous. There's nothing saying that just because you're hunting, you can't stop and talk and be nice to somebody.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, it's rough. I hate getting in and seeing the people that aren't nice.
Yeah. So, it's my spot. Well, actually, it's not. It's all public, and we got here first.
I've been hunting that for 20 years. Well, you're not hunting it today.
I have to tell on myself, because there was one year that I was the jerk, because he got in trouble and couldn't go on opening day with me. So I took Nicole with me, and we had been looking at this one clear cut, and we hadn't scouted it enough to really understand what the clear cut was, but it was that was the only clear cut that I could think of the morning of opening day, and she wanted to go. We get in there before dark, we park, we hike up to this little bench, which is right in the middle of the clear cut, and then we wait for the sunrise to happen. Yeah. As the sunrise happens, it was orange all across this like top of it, and we are sitting in the middle of the clear cut with all of these people looking at us, and I was like, we need to leave. And we both get up and like work our way back to the truck, but the truck was down the hill through the middle of the clear cut to the road, because we came in from the bottom and just parked and then walked up the road and then got up on the bench.
They drove up.
They drove.
But I mean, at that point, they knew what was going on.
Oh yeah, they were so mad at us. I'm sure.
I mean,
we blew that out for sure on opening day.
Yeah, but you also never know. The whole herd could have come through and been. They could have. Everybody could have got a shot at one.
Yeah.
I mean, elk are so resilient; they don't care.
Yeah.
They will come out and you could be hooting and hollering, and then they're sitting there watching you, and then deem that you're not a threat, and then the whole herd walks in front of you. Mm. It could happen. It could.
When he got his 5x3, we had just walked to the end of the road, and we went right to the end, and there were cows all below us, maybe like 20 yards.
Yeah.
And they're just like, "Hey, what's up?" And it wasn't until we found the bull.
Yeah.
And I had laid down, got everything set up, and then he shoots, and then all of a sudden they scatter.
Mm-hmm.
And we were just chilling. Like, we had everything. We got the spot out. He got down and prone. He was like, got the shot. The whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just like, "Hey, what's going on?
Yeah.
What are you doing up there?"
Yeah, I've never been humbled so many times.
Yeah.
But at that point, if you go like this, they could have all run away. You could be making the most amount of noise and thinking there's not a chance an elk's going to be within a mile of me, and then they walk 2 yards from me.
Yeah.
That's what we did with the first time we were up there, that we didn't know if we could shoot the elk. We were slamming the doors.
Oh yeah.
We were kicking everything. They just didn't care.
Or a mouse farts and they all run.
Yeah.
It is the craziest thing that.
Yeah, it is.
You know.
Well, this is going to be a really long episode, so we'll have to have you back on.
Absolutely, I'm
We'll
available.
We'll talk specific things like like whitetail hunting over tree stands, and I'm sure you've heard that one a few times.
Yeah,
like how easy it is to kill whitetail on a tree stand.
You know what? I treat blacktails the same way I hunted whitetails. Yeah. I hunt blacktails out of tree stands, and I've harvested one every year that I've hunted them. Yeah. So, am I doing something wrong? I don't think
or
so.
Are we?
Right, everybody says, "Oh, there's no way you can hunt blacktails out of a tree stand." I do it all the time.
Yeah,
I harvest them all the time. You got to know what you're doing.
Yeah, so, I think that's the key, though. The whitetail hunters that they don't get as much press about is to hunt a deer out of a tree stand. You have to know where that deer is going to be and when.
Yep. So it's people say, "Oh yeah, whitetail hunting's easy because there's 1,000 of them in a square mile." It's not easy. It's not easy.
It's not.
But blacktail hunting's harder. Yeah. I would very, very much argue that. I will never say it's easy because whereas whitetails might be 1,000 in a square mile, blacktails are 10 in a square mile.
Yeah.
Maybe not that low, but
I would say that just from the population and as rugged as this landscape is right here, we've been where we've glassed this clear cut for hours, and then all of a sudden one will just go boop, and then run off.
but there's definitely not as many in the area that, I mean, it might be 500, it might be half, it might be more.
Or you'll get like one where there's nothing in one area.
Yeah.
You'll get over to one clear cut and there'll be like 20 sitting in the clear cut. Yeah.
So, per area, it is what it is, But next we could talk bear hunting, we could talk duck hunting.
We definitely need to talk
more duck hunting. Yeah. Talk turkey hunting. We're more blind leading the blind.
Talk about a failed outdoors. Now there's a story we need to talk about. Yes, absolutely. Dragging you and your kiddo out.
Exactly where the turkeys are.
We got turkeys right here. Yeah. Didn't see nothing.
Didn't hear anything. I think anything we heard was a wish.
It was like a fake gobble. I think they were gobbles.
Yeah.
I think they were.
False gobbles.
I mean, I might be hearing things, but we're fine.
I can't hear anything.
We got a good hike up that hill, though.
We did.
Yeah.
We did.
You chose that hill. We could have sent the kids up that hill. That was your bad.
Hey. There could have been.
We were just trying to optimize.
Hey, how many deer did we see, though?
Wow.
That was a pretty cool clear cut.
That was. I want to go back.
That was a pretty cool bull that, we hiked up and you're like, hey, there's a deer there. There's 4 more next to it. And then we saw those 3 that
they
were
ran
just
off.
way the heck down. That was a really cool clear cut.
That was. Go check that one out.
Yeah. And of course, the deer aren't going to be there.
No. Right now.
Of course, they're there in April.
Yeah.
But
still,
not in October.
But maybe at the end.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe draw a doe tag because. Well, no, there were 2.
I put in for
2 of those were bucks.
I put in for a doe tag. This year I put in for a Willamette doe tag.
Okay.
For me. Doe tag for Eli in the unit that we hunt. A cow tag in the unit we hunt for Eli. And then I got a cow tag for Eastern Oregon.
Oh, nice. I think this year the only cool, fun thing I put in for this year was I had enough points to possibly draw a prong.
Oh, wow. Cool.
And so I may be doing that come August, hopefully. I don't know. Where I had enough points, and I was like, well, I might. I wanted to do a big mule deer hunt this year. Bring my best friend into town. Go out to Eastern Oregon and do a big mule deer hunt, but he's in the Coast Guard getting transferred and kind of just not a great year for it. So maybe 2026 will be our big mule deer hunt year. And I'll be going in with 8 points going into a 3-point unit. So I'll be a group leader, and I think he's got 1 point, so mine will wash his out, and got a couple buddies that might come out for that. So that'll be fun. But boy, it'd be really cool to maybe do maybe not failed outdoors, but
On location?
on location.
On location.
Antelope road hunt.
Oh man, that'd be awesome.
That'd be cool.
That would be.
That'd be cool. Hopefully not failed outdoors.
We want to try antelope.
That would be.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never done it. It's a bucket list item,
Yeah.
and I don't need to have a Boone and Crockett.
Just
I'd love to have a buck, but the unit I put in for is a buck or doe.
yeah,
So of course
Yeah.
I'm going to go after a buck.
yeah,
But a doe's fine too.
yeah. Nice.
So, yeah, I'm interested to see. I'm interested. I've eaten some, and it's good. It's got a different taste. You know, every
Yeah.
type of animal has a little bit different taste, but I remember it being good, and
Something that doesn't taste like a goat, we're good.
yeah. Supposedly they smell like Fritos, like corn chips.
I've heard that. Yeah.
Where like they smell like when you come up to it. Let me tell you, the worst thing I've ever smelled was coming up to a bear. That is like
you got some.
nobody ever warns you how horrible those things smell.
You got some funk on you, buddy.
You walk within 15 yards of it, and you just
Yeah.
there's something. It's worse than a wet dog.
Yeah.
It is.
I remember the elk was musty.
Yeah. Elk can be very musty, especially rut bulls.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Rut bulls can be very musty. Deer can be pretty like full rutted out deer.
Yeah.
They can be very musty if they got their tarsal glands all peed up.
But yeah, you know, there's one thing what people don't tell you is don't touch the leg because they pee all over themselves.
Mhm.
Like yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
A little. You want to bring us some hand sanitizer after that?
Oh, ladies, I got a doe tag. Or if you got a second buck tag.
There you go. Absolutely. Well, hey, thanks for joining us on the podcast today.
Thanks for coming up. You know, next
this is
time
awesome.
we'll find a spot that's maybe not so cold and windy.
You know, this has been a little chilly.
Hey,
but it's good.
guess what? Every time I'm up here in the fall, it's cold and chilly too.
You're just a preview.
Right?
A preview.
It's the same old for me.
Yeah.
Up here.
And what do we got?
We got coffee.
And is it good?
It is good.
It is good.
It is good.
I've got the Road Hunter, I think.
Yeah, a Road Hunter? I don't know. They're all good.
They're all well. I've only had the one type, and it's really good. So you've got the lighter medium,
Yeah.
which is the
So we have the Lost Hiker, which is a blend.
Lost Hiker. That's the one I've got.
So the Lost Hiker is the blend.
Yeah.
Everyone seems to like that one.
Mm-hmm.
The other ones are good too. One's darker. The Zero Dark 30 is a dark roast. And then the Road Hunter was a medium from Peru. But
I want to try that one.
Yeah.
It'd be a nice one to try.
It smells the best when you're
Really?
roasting it.
Yeah.
It is good.
Yeah.
But yeah, go on the website, failedoutdoors.com. If you are in Oregon, we can ship to you. If you're not, sorry. We failed at roasting.
Maybe one day.
Yeah. Again, thanks for joining.
Hey.
Everyone, we'll see you in the next episode and hope you like this one.